the DraftKings backfield analysis. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Russell here with us, taking a look at some running backs, cash game GPPs, and value for week 2. What do you like about this group kind of as a whole?
Stability is the key. And basically 4 out of the 5 we're going to be looking at have basically feature carries all to themselves, which is fairly exciting. We've had much off-season discussion about how there are no more feature backs. So it's nice to have a few guys that are in line for, 20 to 25 touches.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw that kind of coming in week 1. It was actually not a lot of guys out there there were quite a few guys out there who did have, lead role touches, which was nice to see. This first one here, DeAngelo Williams, he certainly did in the passing game and in the running game. And at 7,100, a decent price tag as well.
Certainly a decent price tag. And, you look at those 32 touches in the first game and you think, well, are they going to continue that? And if it was a guy where if it was Le'Veon Bell week 1, you'd think, okay, maybe they're going to scale this down the next few weeks just because, 32 times 16 is like 500 touches, and you can't be having that for any feature back. So, but DeAngelo, I mean, he's only going for the first 4 weeks here, and then he's taking a huge back seat. So I don't see why they would scale these back. I could see him getting another 25 to 30 touches this week. And then you sort of bake in, okay, the Bengals, yeah, they're a pretty solid defense overall, but they're missing Vontaze Burfict still. He ran all over them last year. They didn't really do that much to improve their defense. And, I mean, DeAngelo Williams, since he sort of took over this role for the Steelers, has been dominant. So I have no reason to believe why he wouldn't at least be in the top 3 for running back scoring this week, barring an injury. And at 7,100, I mean, I'm not really even paying a premium. So I'm just locking him in. It's fairly easy to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think those touches are what you're looking for here, and he's certainly going to get them. C.J. Anderson, you're talking about next year at 6,800. I love C.J. Anderson this week. Going up against a pretty bad Indy defense.
Yeah, again, so I was doing the write-ups, and initially I was like, all right, DeAngelo Williams, easy number 1. And I was like, but I really like C.J. Anderson as well. And at 6,800, you sort of look at that matchup with the Colts. And you sort of, look at everything surrounding him. Obviously, a lot of struggles in 2015 with injuries, but everything seems to be behind him. You look at Trevor Siemian, they're not going to be leaning on him at any point during the season. You just look at this Colts matchup, and it's just, again, it's so easy. And as I was halfway through, I was like, no, it's a tie. This is just too good of a matchup for Anderson. They're both 1A and 1A. I think you want both of them in your cash game lineups. I have there's no real difference between them. Both score 25 to 30 points, honestly, fairly easily.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just fairly obvious to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, you look at Anderson, the matchup is one, it's solid. This Indy defense, obviously last week, there wasn't really much of a rushing game to really go with. It was a lot of heavy passing attack, but you know what? We've seen big games from running backs against the Colts, when they go that route, especially when you have a defense behind them like the Broncos do. So I like him, cash game guy as well. I think even in GPPs at 6,800, he's a reasonable high upside play.
And again, I love the matchup, and the touches he's going to get is just – it's so extreme over a lot of the running backs. I mean, we talk about non-feature roles, and while I said that a little facetiously at the beginning, there aren't a lot of guys who are going to get that 20 to 25 touches, and I think Anderson is one of the few, and you just look at the matchups with Adrian Peterson and Todd Gurley, and it just makes things so easy. They don't even cost that much. I mean, that's 13.9 for Anderson and DeAngelo together. I just think that's so cheap for potentially, 50 to 60 points.
Especially when you look at, I mean, obviously you got Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, but there are a lot of great mid-price wide receivers that kind of go and pair him along with as well.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the name of the game. We love Odell Beckham, and I think, with a Marcus Mariota at quarterback, you might be able to fit, all 4 in and throw in a Willie Snead, and look at that. Oh, my God, 170 points. Look at you. You're awesome.
talking GPP backs here, you kind of dive down in price a little bit. You're talking DeMarco Murray for Tennessee at 5,700 against Detroit. He showed a lot of good signs last week, even in kind of a down matchup and kind of a down game for Tennessee.
Yeah, this is where people get into trouble when using sort of box score statistics, and not everyone. I give a lot of you credit, but I think some people would maybe use that 3.2 yards per carry against DeMarco Murray, and sometimes usage isn't always. Those carries aren't necessarily a good indicator of how he actually played. He ran well. He received the ball well. Obviously got those 2 red zone touchdowns in the receiving game. As long as Mariota's upright and running and that threat out of the backfield, as sort of that running quarterback, we've seen there's a correlation between, running quarterbacks and the running back contributions in terms of fantasy points. So I love this matchup. Obviously, Detroit is going to be below average this year. I don't think there's any doubt. Obviously, they face the Colts, who are an above-average offense, but I think just generally speaking, it's fairly clear. I mean, they kind of were last year, and, ever since they lost Sue, it's kind of like a little bit of a struggle since then. So, yeah, I like that. And overall, I just think this is a good matchup.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, pretty reasonable price tag for Murray as well. I like the Tennessee offense in terms of GPPs this week. I think there's a lot of sneaky value there. TJ Yeldon, who you liked last week, and obviously with Chris Ivory unlikely to play. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's made much progress since last week. TJ Yeldon would kind of be that featured role who did play a ton in week 1.
Yeah, so again, Yeldon's another guy where the usage is there, and we're going to look at that, 2.8 yards per carry and go, ew, gross. And I do that too. I'm not exempt from that, but at the same time, you kind of watch that game and you see the carries he had, and the Packers were all over him. So, I mean, he was breaking tackles behind the line of scrimmage and getting 1 yard. That's much different than sort of not getting touched, and going for 5 yards. So, I think we have to be very, very understanding of the usage there and what obviously got that rushing touchdown. He got those 4 and 5 receptions. So, I just think this is a much easier matchup for him, and it's looking like the same usage. I don't think they'll be able to. I don't think the Chargers will be able to hold down the passing game like the Packers did for the most part. I think Hearns is going to get loose. Obviously, Allen Robinson still has a bit of a tough matchup, but Yeldon should have some wide open spaces to get open, at least in the screen game. So he's going to get red zone touches again. I think there's quite a bit of opportunity for 4,700.
Yeah, definitely with you there. And you look at Yeldon, I mean, I think that game alone, as far as the total goes, is a little bit under the radar, which I like. I like in GPPs, especially with Theo Riddick right there. It seems like Yeldon's probably going to get lost in the mix in terms of ownership. Talking value here, you got Tevin Coleman at 4,500 going on the road facing Oakland. Obviously, Tevin Coleman was kind of the talk of the town, kind of taking over a role there from Devonta Freeman in week 1. But overall, it was pretty split. He was just the more successful back.
We've already been through this, actually. Last year, let's do a little rewind at this time. Tevin Coleman was coming off an 18-carry game, and he had a really nice reception in the first game of the year. And then, get into week 2, he gets that rushing touchdown, and then he gets hurt. And then we all know what happened with Devonta Freeman. So this is what's interesting in the storyline this time around. Devonta Freeman missed practice or was limited in practice today with a hamstring or a thigh. And I mean, we'll see as this storyline expands. But if Freeman's limited, I think this is a great time to pounce on Coleman. I'd guess by Sunday he might be a little chalky if Freeman news, sort of hits a little bigger. But as of right now, I think it's going a little under the radar. I kind of like the pass usage potential here. You kind of look at Sanu. He got banged up at the end of last week's game. Julio Jones was visibly limping around at the end of the game there as well. So, I mean, you have to wonder if they're going to utilize the running backs a little bit more if those guys are hampered. You look at Jacob Tamme, he got involved. So if they're getting Jacob Tamme involved, they're certainly going to want to give Coleman as many touches as they can.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, you look at that Oakland defense, so we expect to be improved, but not one that we're shying away from just quite yet. Pretty decent total there for Atlanta to target as well, even with kind of those injury situations to really keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
So that's going to wrap things up with the DraftKings running back analysis. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.